We're going to talk about a judge allegedly behaving badly. His name is Judge Eric Roberson. We are in Florida, and we're going to read the full notice of formal charges from Florida's Judicial Qualifications Commission. Their investigative panel found some wrongdoing. Here's a preview. He's calling somebody an entitled little snot. He says to the person's father, "And God bless you for not beating the tar out of her." Then he says, in reference to a video where there's an altercation going on, the judge says to the father, "Excellent restraint, sir, that you only hit the phone." The girl's like, "No, he actually hit me." The dad's like, "I did not." The judge is like, "Well, excellent restraint." And then the judge ends up saying he should have hit you more and says that this video makes her look terrible. So let's read this complaint because it's kind of wild what's going on here. So here we've got the investigative panel of the Florida Judicial Commissions at its meeting on May 1st, 2026 by a majority vote of its members, pursuant to the rules of Florida Judicial Qualifications Commission, finds that probable cause exists for formal proceedings to be instituted against you, Judge Eric Roberson. Probable cause exists on the following formal charges. So a quick footnote says charges that are supported by a separately filed audio exhibit will be referenced as such. I did see that filed, but I wasn't able to access it, so we can't hear it. On January 28th, 2025, while presiding in the matter of Zoe Wood versus Tatiana Yusin, you, Judge Roberson, granted an injunction for the petitioner and made the following comments regarding the respondent. Judge Roberson, this is scary. There's something seriously off with you, and it's a shock that there hasn't been criminal charges for this. Part of me wants to just ban you from ever coming back to our state and keep your issues up in Virginia. On June 3rd, 2025, while presiding in the matter of Chanel Knight versus Matthew Kep in Duval County, after you found that petitioner failed to show evidence supporting her allegation of the respondent stalking her, you made the following comments to the petitioner, so the woman who was seeking the restraining order. Judge, are you having treatment for anything, ma'am? Are you under treatment for any mental health issues? The petitioner says no. Judge, something's seriously off here. And I remember you have a unique name. I remember it from the last one. I'm going over the paperwork from that one. Something's definitely off here. Later in the same hearing, after the respondent made statements suggesting that the petitioner had stalked him, you encouraged the respondent to file a petition for an injunction against the petitioner, gave him explicit instructions on how to do so, and prejudged, which you're not supposed to do, and prejudged the potentially forthcoming petition by stating that you would grant it. The respondent said, "Really, this injunction should be the other way around." The judge said, "I don't disagree." Respondent says under her breath to herself, "Wow, unbelievable." Judge, "Well, now you know her name." The respondent says, Yeah. Judge says, "You are free to file an injunction that will be granted. Attach these and that will be granted. Ma'am, you need to seek some help. You have some profound issues, and I'm not making light of it. It's a serious issue. You can't keep coming and filing these against people when you're the one doing what's very troubling behavior and having delusions that you can't prove at all of someone around. You're building a record to where ultimately we're going to stop you from filing in the court system." And then there's an ellipses and it says, "Go file one against her." And the respondent says, "Where do I do that? And how? I've never done it before." Judge says, "Second floor, like right now down the hallway, attach those." Respondent says, "Perfect, I'll go do it now." And then the judge dismisses the petitioner's case, says this case is dismissed, just like the last one was. "I suspect you'll be getting an injunction against you soon, ma'am. You can't do this, you need to seek help, and if we come back here, I'm going to see to it that you get some help." The petitioner and Knight subsequently filed an appeal that is still presently pending, as well as a motion to disqualify that you denied. On June 3rd, 2025, the same day, the respondent and Knight filed a petition for an injunction as you suggested. You then granted the petition and issued a temporary injunction, as you promised to do during the prior hearing before the petition was even filed. On June 12th, 2025, the respondent and Knight 2, the second case, filed a motion to disqualify you, citing your comments during the prior injunction hearing, stating, "In the prior proceeding, Judge Roberson made remarks and issued findings that conveyed bias and undermined respondent's credibility without legal or factual support. These findings now create a substantial risk of prejudgment in the present case, where respondent stands as the opposing party." On June 13th, 2025, you denied the motion to disqualify as moot because the hearing on June 17th, 2025 is before a different circuit judge, so it probably said the Honorable so-and-so. The successor judge ultimately granted the petition for injunction, and the case is currently pending appeal. On August 18th, 2025, while presiding in the matter of Sylvester Green, maybe it's Sylvester, versus Erica Green Rains, after reviewing text message evidence submitted by the petitioner, who is the father of the respondent, you demeaned the respondent. Respondent says, "It's wrong what my father's doing. It's very wrong. He's reading." Judge, "You entitled little snot." Respondent, "I'm not an entitled snot." "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not. I have." Judge, "You will listen as I give judgment to you. Talking like that to your father, you should be ashamed and embarrassed, and then no, you say another word and you're going to jail. Look here. You will finally have consequences for your actions if you want to act and behave like that. You may get to treat your dad like that." And then the judge says to the father, the petitioner, "And God bless you for not beating the tar out of her, because she was spared the rod, and good God is she spoiled." Judge says to the respondent, now the daughter, "So if you want to talk like that, and then you feel like you can talk to him like any which way and say," and then it says he's intimating a female voice, "Oh, I'm telling him my truth." No, you are a terrible human being, and I can look you in the eye and tell you that. And I'm a judge, so that's a legal judgment. You are a terrible human being. Now, pull that video up and I'll hear everything else you want me to consider, and then you will never have contact with him or go anywhere near his business again for the rest of your natural life. Thank you. Go ahead and pull that video up." And then the footnote here notes that you're making these comments prior to any actual ruling. So then they pull the exhibit up, and then this filing says, "Later in the same hearing, during your review of the video evidence submitted by the respondent, you made comments again remarking on the respondent's lack of violence and encouraging additional violence between the parties." Judge to the petitioner to the dad says, "Excellent restraint, sir, that you only hit the phone." Respondent, "He hit me." Petitioner, "I did not." Judge, "Well, that's excellent restraint." Respondent, "He slapped me. He hit me." Judge, "I know." Respondent, "That's okay?" Judge, "He should have hit you more." Respondent, "That's domestic violence. Wow, that's domestic violence." Judge, "Well, this video makes you look as terrible as I..." And the respondent says, "That is my house. I've owned it for 15 years. It says, Judge under his breath says, "Oh, what on God's green earth?" I mean, look in the mirror, dude. The respondent says, "That's domestic violence." Judge, "No, how you treat him is domestic violence. His was a commendable restraint and not acting how any rational person would have reacted to her." Later in the same hearing, after further reviewing the video evidence, which featured the respondent telling the petitioner, "That's my money," multiple times, you made the following comments, further endorsing violence. Judge, "You're somebody who, 1, has not the first bit of respect or decency towards your parent. 2, not just the money, but you love money. You can hear it in your voice. You're simmering." And then he imitates again. "That's my money. That's my money." You love money. You love it so much that you treat your father like that. Again, you are a terrible human being. Tell me what else you want me to consider. Respondent, "I wish my father wouldn't put his hands on me, or he shouldn't be greedy." Judge, "Sir, you should have put." Respondent, "Does he care about my children?" "No, they're his grandchildren." Judge, to the petitioner, "You should have put your hands on her more, earlier in her life, so she wouldn't act like this now." In the Green case, you granted a permanent injunction against the respondent and noted that it was only the third permanent injunction you had given out that year. What does that matter? With one of the priors having been granted due to the respondent being a child molester. Wow, okay, so you're comparing like, oh, this is so rare that I do this. The last time I did it was for someone who was molesting a child. And you're so terrible that I have to do it again. You then compared the respondent to a child molester and made a ruling that she was a terrible person. And they put ruling in quotes. The judge says, "There will be a, until further order of the court, injunction, and it should tell you what I think of you. That, have I given more than 2 of those this year? The one who was a child molester I gave, so that's the company you're in, ma'am, in my opinion. Never-ending injunction, to never go, let's make it a mile, not just 500 feet, 1 mile of his home, his business address." Respondent, "That's not that's my house, that's not his business." Judge, "Oops." Respondent, "Oh." Judge, "Yeah, should have thought about that before you were such a terrible person." Respondent, "I'm not a terrible person, sir." Judge, "You are. I've literally ruled that." Respondent, "I'm not a terrible person. Am I a terrible person, Dad?" Judge says, "Well." Petitioner, the dad, says, "You are now." Judge says, sir, yeah. Everything I've seen, ma'am, you are somebody who's so greedy that you'd act like that towards your own father. Respondent, I'm not greedy. Judge, oh, trying to set him up with the, oh, you touched me, because you've got a phone in his face being as disrespectful as you can be. And he reacted. Not fully, thank God. And now we're back to the findings. They say your actions constitute inappropriate conduct in violation of canons 1, 2A, 3B1, 3B2, 3B3, 3B4, 3B5, 3B8, 3B9, 3B10, and 3E1 of the Florida Code of Judicial Conduct. You are hereby notified of your right to file a written answer to these charges within 20 days of service of this notice upon you. Dated this 11th day of June 2026 from the Investigative Panel of the Florida Judicial Qualifications Commission. So there we go. What do you think of that? Because my take on it is, and maybe these are family matters, maybe this wouldn't be, like televised, streamed anyway, but it's one of the reasons I really think courts should be easier to access, should be transparent, because maybe judges wouldn't be off the wall if they knew they had not 24/7, but anytime court could be rolling, they could have oversight out there. The public could be observing. It wouldn't just be the parties that are there for a court hearing and nobody else in the room, and maybe nobody checking in on the record, and maybe none of the parties bringing a grievance forward. So I think it's wild to have a judge sit here and just make rulings that somebody's terrible. I'm going to throw you in jail. You're as bad as a child molester. That's the company you're in. Telling people that he thinks they're crazy and having delusions, and then promising that I'm going to grant this a certain way if you go file that thing. Just that prejudgment, you're not supposed to do prejudgments like that. So it was a lot. Hope you guys are having a great Sunday morning. If you're interested in seeing Judge Eric Roberson's response to this or what happens, let me know. That way I make it a priority to follow it. And you guys all take care. See you guys.